My nickname Hank. Wow, thanks for inviting me out. And me and Mike corresponded via the internet a few times, emails back and forth, and I agreed to come speak here. This used to be my home group before I moved away, and back when it was over on 103rd, Timiquannia. Yeah, that's the name of the road, right? Okay, I don't remember. Anyway, the older I get, the less I know. So I came to Narcotics Anonymous broken and bruised. I think we all did. I think we all came here, pretty beat up. A lot of my message is a trinity of hope, not a religious theory, but mind, body, and spirit. And when I believe in my spiritual path, and I believe that the last time I used, the very last thought I had was, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to use it anymore. I had to come to grips with how bad my life was destroyed. I didn't even know. I just knew that what I was doing was bad, it was wrong, and it sucked. So gratefully, I can say that I had the gift of desperation, and that was my ass was beat to death. I was just above the death mark. And the reason I say that is because I had a .45 pistol in my mouth that night. And, the struggle was take another hit, pull the trigger. Take another hit, pull the trigger. And, I've said this a few times. I'm just grateful I had another hit. Because at the timing, if the timing had lapsed, I may have made the other choice. We all know what that would have became. That would have been the end. So anyway, back to the beginning. I'm from New Orleans, the swamp right above New Orleans. You guys ever watch the Gator people? Well, that's where I grew up. I grew up in Killian, Louisiana. Well, let's just say I was a kid there. I didn't grow up for many, many years. I'm not sure if I'm still haven't grown up yet. But I learned at a very early age how to be abusive and how to abuse people. Because I'm a firm believer that what we learn in our first 5-6 years in our life is what we're going to manifest. Everything else that we do is going to be built on that little bitty block foundation. And what I learned then was physical abuse, mental abuse, spiritual abuse. And you can even throw financial abuse in there because we lived in a shack in the swamp. So a lot of what I learned and how to be very deceitful and brutal to myself came from the very house I lived in. I remember as a little bitty kid reaching up to bars for beer cans and running like hell with them, whether they were empty or not. And what I mean by that is everyone was drinking, I was going to snatch my little piece and run. And I learned that as these bottles would be opened, people started to change through the party life. As an hour from now or an hour later, that people are different. And I'll never forget the first real high I had was the sit and spin. You guys remember those? A little sit and spin, just spin, and I never forget. I would spin those things, and I loved to stand up right afterwards because I loved to fall down right after I stood up. 4 or 5 years old. I remember my mother taking this thing from me a few times because I could not get enough of it. So through abuse and learning how to treat people that way anyway, I learned how to treat people in a negative way. And, my father was extremely abusive. It was so bad it destroyed my life, so I don't really have to get into the details of how bad it was. I just know that when I got clean and I had kids, that I broke that generation gap. I put the gap there. I made it to where my kids did not have to live through what I lived through. And I'll tell you, when my mother finally left my father, that's when I started so-called partying, because I wasn't scared anymore. I remember every time my dad's truck would come into the driveway, I would run that way, as long as I could possibly be gone, until he had to come in, and then it was abuse time, whatever he chose for the day. And that's how I grew up, but I eventually moved away from there and moved into the city. And man, the party life as a little kid, the first time I ever did mushrooms, I was 11, and I picked them myself. And you want to know how I learned that? I watched my brother do it a day before that. And again, I watched everyone change. I watched them take these little mushrooms off of cow shit, go in there and eat them and do whatever they did with them. And then all of a sudden, it was a happy cartoon for all night and all day. So me and my little buddies, I said, hey, I know where we can get some stuff that'll make us feel really good. And there was 4 of us, 11-year-old kids. I don't know what grade you're in 11, or when you're 11 years old, but probably couldn't be 5th or 6th grade. And I remember for the next 17 years chasing that high. But they got better as it went along. The next high, the next thing I learned how to do, smoke crack for the first time when I was 12. And I remember going to get it. I remember watching that same thing happen, watching my friend go from a really cool guy, like, hey man, how you doing, to doing his thing. And then all of a sudden he became someone totally different. And that's one thing I learned from a very early age, just watching how these things affected people. And the way I felt is I did not want to feel this way, so I needed something fast and hard and quick. And that's what I was searching for. And every single time I got these things, just got worse and worse and worse. And I always had the I'll nevers. I'll never do that. I'll never do that. I'll never do that. I'll never do that. Every time it happened. Every single time. Early, quick. And then I even said right after, I'll never do that again. Bam! It wasn't even time to come down yet, and I'm off up to the races again. So my school life didn't happen. I quit school in 7th grade and ventured out in life and started doing my thing. We moved to Atlanta, and I was 12 years old. And that's where I really got destructive. I had a sister and a brother died from addiction. At that time, I have 2 sisters and a brother who died from this disease. To qualify, guys, I've done just about every kind of drug that came out before 1994. I've been clean since 94. September 1st, 94 is when I got clean. But before that day, I got just about everything that had came out. I remember about 2 years clean, an alcoholic beverage came out that I really thought would have been cool. And I really struggled with that. I thought, damn, I want to try that. That would just be a hip and cool drink. Something my brain snapped and I thought, what an idiot. But I just remember early recovery as things were coming on the shelf, because like the 90s and it was like when all the cool party products were coming out, the Camel cigarettes and all these things that just made you cool to do this stuff. And I'm sure, the older generation had their Camel cigarettes too, whatever was cool for that party generation. But, this was after I got clean. I was 24 years old when I got clean. I'd used for 17 years. That was a rough ride growing up. And I stopped having fun at about 14 years old. That's when it became work. When my mother said, get the hell out of my house. And I had to figure my own way. And at that point is where I had to make it or break it. And I chose to do the drug life. I chose the life of destruction. I never had any positive reactions out of my life after that, till the day I got clean. A lot of cool stuff happened, because partying people, addicts are really cool people. Even though we get high and we steal each other's shit and we have sex with each other's partners and steal each other's cars, and you know, that kind of stuff. But we're really cool people when it boils down to it. I mean, very unique. A lot of addicts are very creative. Let's put it that way, because we had to get real creative to use, y'all. I know I learned early, very early, how I had to get my drugs because I wasn't an adult yet. And there was plenty of people out there willing to get me high for things I had to do, whatever it was. You know, so I went through that whole cycle of, you know, I need to get this. What can I do to get this? And so I never became a man. I never grew up with the masses. You know, the whole abandonment issues, like I was beat on and molested until I was 8 years old, and then I was abandoned for a very, very, very long time. So I had to deal with these feelings. And there's an addict in the rooms here in Jacksonville that's got to talk about the feelings. And just the way he says it, I just love the way he says it. Some of y'all may know I'm talking about it. But it's real. It's real. I mean, we have a feeling, so we use. We have a feeling, so we use. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. We just had a feeling, so we're going to go get high. You know, I mean, it don't matter what the feeling was. I didn't need a specific feeling to get high. I needed to wake up and take a breath. Then it was time to get high. And then it was time to stop using when I crashed. Because I didn't have that. I never once in my life, I can never remember one time going, you know, I'm going to save this for tomorrow. Not even cigarettes, not even, I mean, just the basic life, even food. I never did that. I mean, I would eat, get high, eat, just if I could, whatever drug I was doing, but I never put anything in perspective of, I'm going to need that later. And, you know, I just did everything to extreme. Everything, even criminal activities, just to the extreme. I put the stamp on my life as just a complete waste case. After burying 2 sisters and a brother dying from the disease of addiction, I truly believed that I was going to die with a needle in my arm. So I said, to hell with it. Let's run this train now. See how far it'll take me, and then when it's done, it's done. So at about 15 years old, I started shooting up. And I never let anybody shoot me up. So I was very bold and brave at 15 years old. I mean, that was my vision of becoming a man. I'm going to do my own party. I'm going to do it my way. Because that's what I was taught. It's, you know, you have to, if you're going to be out here on the streets, you got to do, you know, you got to be tough. And I'm lucky I never got killed or put in prison because I did so many things that was illegal. Oh my God. I did enough for 30 people to do life. You know, and I've always evaluated that. You know, we talk about reciprocity. And man, I had a rough time for about 10 years when I got clean. And, you know, it seemed like every turn I made, life was getting better, but it was just always something dragging me down, and I never got to the true surrender. And I'll tell you, when I finally surrendered, my life changed. Everything changed. And I mean everything. Even the way I handled the negative things that happened, it all changed because I had the tools to do it. I had the inner confidence to make moves in my life. No matter what the outcome was, I could now make choices. As these years went by, and I struggled, you know, I got married when I was 17 years old. Like, my fear of loss was so brutal by that time. This girl, little girl, my age, told me that we wouldn't have sex till we were married. And I said, well, we can end this shit now. We're going to have sex. So, you know, I can't say that was a wise choice, but needless to say, I had 2 kids out of that marriage. And it was very destructive, very abusive, extremely sick, and nothing good ever came out of it but my 2 kids. For my life, for me to be able to say that nothing good came out of something that lasted 7 years, I mean nothing except 2 awesome kids. But I was, you know, just a waste case. I was high all the time. So I went away. I just disappeared. And then I got with another girl. She got pregnant. And I was 21-ish. She was 18. And And here I am with 2 kids I haven't seen in a couple years. Another kid on the way, still a junkie. I used to beat her pregnant, smoking crack, because she would give me flack about bringing it home. But immediately when I brought it home, she would get high. So we had a 4-month-old crack baby. Her name's Sydney. She's 19 now, in college. I think it turned out pretty good, but she does have physical limitations because of that. Everybody sitting in this room had their last use, unless you're high now, and hopefully you'll get to that pretty soon. But we all had our last use, and if you don't remember it, I fear for your life, because that moment in time, the turning point, it's written in our book, the turning point is extremely crucial to my story, because without that turning point, that split second where I made a choice, none of this would be possible. None of us would be sitting here if I hadn't got clean that day. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about, but those ripples and waves that was created, someone helped me get clean, I helped them get clean, they helped them get clean, they helped them. So I'm not the type of person that would believe I'm responsible for all y'all being clean, but the ripples are the effect process brings you in here. Like that tidal wave goes out and brings you right back in. I'm getting a little metaphysical on y'all, but that's what I am. That's who I am. So anyway, I'm in this crack house, and I'm in the bathroom, and when I smoked, y'all, I got naked, and people didn't like it, so I had to go in the bathroom. Just the way it was. I'm in the house with 20 people doing their thing, and I'm naked. They're like, oh, this is just too weird. So I'm in there with this gun in my mouth, and I had this little cigar box with a bunch of little baggies in it, and I'm pretty sure y'all know what was in the baggies. And that, the theory of, well, if I just take another hit, it buys me some more time. But the thing I wasn't looking at was I had been doing that for about 3 or 4 months, just continuously, and I never forget the taste of burnt gunpowder in my mouth. I don't know if any of y'all own guns. I'm pretty sure some of y'all do in the society we live in. Just to smell a shell puts me right back in that crack house. Just to smell that, and it's so embedded in my DNA, my genes, just the smell of that burnt barrel. Because I never had a clean gun. I mean, I was a nasty ass junkie. What the hell was I going to clean my gun for? You know what I'm saying? It was just my habit, my habitual actions wouldn't even allow me to clean my gun. I just didn't have the time, if you know what I mean. But anyway, this 4-month-old crack baby is in this house. And what I considered the lowest form of humanity was a crack whore, shall we say. I hope y'all don't mind, I'm going to get a little detailed and rough here. But in my eyes, I needed someone below me, and that was it. And I was going to have sexual relations with this prostitute, and she heard the baby cry in the other room, and she said, you guys have a baby in this house? And this girl told me, you are a 1-6 son of a bitch, and you deserve to die. And got up and turned down the drugs and left the house. Now, at that point, what had happened was what I had placed below me just placed me below them. I had nowhere to go but the bathroom with the gun. That was it. That was it. But that turning point I'm talking about, I took the box and threw it in the toilet, and it stopped the toilet up when I flushed it. Water's pouring everywhere. I'm on the floor trying to scrape this up, and I got little baggies stuck all over me, naked with the gun, and it blew my mind so bad that I had to get on the floor in toilet water and try to clean up my mess. That's the turning point. I said, if I ever want to live like this again. So I remember pulling that shell out of that barrel and laying that gun on the toilet seat. And I didn't have pockets because I was butt naked. But I remember gripping that shell I had in my hand. And I opened the door, and everybody's rushing in the bathroom because they wanted what's on the floor. And then I walked over and I grabbed my baby. Remember, she was 4 months old. Little crack baby. Weighed 4 pounds and 3 ounces when she was born. So it just blows me away to see this little infant here in a meeting. I love that, because when I got clean, I brought her, and she grew up in the rooms. But so anyway, that night we leave, and the mother of this kid was like, "What are you doing?" I mean, you got to know I beat her all the time. I was very abusive. I did everything my father taught me how to do. Very good. I used to think I can do this better. I can abuse people better. So, we always want to get better than our parents, right? I know for me, I want my children to do a little better than me. Hopefully it's not abuse people. But, that's where my mentality was. But that night, I got in the van, I left. I only had on like my blue jean shorts. And no shirt, no shoes. No, I was just soaking wet, gross, hadn't taken a shower in 2 or 3 weeks. And that drive out of that driveway was the most fear-based choice I had ever made. Because I was very sincere, I didn't want that gun back in my mouth. But I didn't want to stop using. I just didn't want to be high anymore. I didn't want these feelings anymore. I didn't want to feel that way anymore. I go to a meeting. The only thing that somebody told me to do. I tried to go to treatment. 5 treatment centers turned me down. And what I had on was blue jean shorts, a blue and a red flip-flop, and no shirt. My hair was wire, just gross, matted. Like, it wasn't even dreads, y'all. It was just matted garbage. And these 5 treatment centers, my mother drove me around, and they all turned me down. Said, "Oh, you're not in enough harm's way." I weighed 117 pounds. I was shitting and pissing blood. I mean, how bad did it have to be? So one of the ladies at the last treatment center come running out. Her name's Peggy P. She's a member in Marietta, Georgia. She come running out and handed me a little card. She said, "Go to this address at 8 o'clock. Please. Be there. I'll be there. You go there." And that was the Rising Sun Clubhouse in Marietta, Georgia. That's where the N8 textbook was written. About 80% of it was written there and put together. It was the oldest clubhouse in the world. But that's where I got clean. And I remember driving in the parking lot. I was looking for a CA meeting, y'all. I really believed that I just needed, because I'd read about it at these treatment centers. Because the beginning of the day, I didn't know what I wanted or what I needed. I just knew that somebody had something that I needed and it wasn't me. So I go into a treatment center, and they had this little thing that said CA and AA. I said, "Well, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm definitely this, if I have to choose." So I pulled in the parking lot and said, "Is this a CA meeting?" And my friend Dylan, who's still clean today, he's like, "Well, what is CA?" I said, and I showed him the brochure. And he said, "Oh, Cocaine Anonymous." He goes, No, this is NA. I'm like, "What's that stand for?" He said, "Narcotics." I said, "Cocaine's a narcotic, right?" And he's like, "Get out of the van. You're in the right spot. Get out of the van." So I go into this place, and the old Rising Sun was an old beat-up crack house, y'all. It was a shooting gallery, and it was just bad. But it was just this old house, like the ones over in Springfield area. The old, just beat to hell and back house. But there were people all out. There were windows around, and everybody was standing in the windows because the room was full. The house, the whole place was full. And people were all standing in the windows, sharing through the windows. It was such a cool place. But anyway, when I walked up, I still had on blue jean shorts and a red and a blue flip-flop and no shirt. And I had my little baby in this little cradle. And everybody just moved, and they pushed me in the door. The very first person that shared, I heard something that probably saved my life. The very first person. And then I started getting paranoid because everybody was sharing my story. They were all talking about what I just had got through doing. I thought my mother had to call these people and tell them what I did, so they created this little story to make me feel comfortable. And then that lady that gave me the card, when she shared, I'm sitting on the floor. Like, this place had couches all around the outside, and everybody sat on the floor, and everybody smoked. You could not see across this room, and it was about this big. You could not see across the room because everybody had to smoke 14 cigarettes during the meeting. And when you got 100 people smoking 14 cigarettes, that's 1,400 cigarettes. I love the details of the Rising Sun Clubhouse. So I'm sitting in the floor, and she stands up and started sharing and just was pointing at me. Like, I literally thought she was going to hit me. But what she said was, you never have to use again. You're safe. You're home. Don't ever leave. And then from that moment on, everybody that said anything, I felt like it was just the most inviting information I'd ever gotten in my entire life. And you know what, y'all? I was stupid enough to buy into it. I bought the hook, line, and sinker that night. Because I never forget what I heard that night. Because it saved my life. You know, and NA is more than meetings and more than just a bunch of people sitting around talking about how bad it was. Because that was my qualifications. I got up and picked up a white chip, and I got a sponsor. And I started doing things for my self-esteem. Because if you want self-esteem, you have to do esteemable things. Me and that girl got married at an NA convention with 2 months clean. That ended up bad too. But I had 3 kids with her, and then we got a divorce. So I have 5 kids, and I've had all my kids for I've had my 2 oldest for 13 years and my 3 youngest for 7 years. And both of their mothers are just strung out junkies. They just couldn't get it. The first one was before NA. The second was after she had 5 years clean. But I had to make a decision. Do I want to die with her or live with you guys? And I think the most important part for me was becoming part of this process. And when I mean process, I don't mean, coming here at 8 o'clock and catching a meet and getting some free coffee and cake and going home. I mean, there is a process. This is a life. This is a life. This is absolutely an entire life change. I've been to college 4 times since I've been clean. I finally went to school, to go to school, not to sell drugs or because my mom or the truant officer told me to. I want to go back a little bit. When I was 13, when I moved to Atlanta, I met this guy named Bo. And I'm walking down the sidewalk, and there's this little sign company, Hi, skipping school. And I walked in, and I said, hey, I want to learn how to paint signs. He said, all right, sit in this chair right here. He was very patient with me. I remember we were painting these capital Cadillac tags for the front of Cadillacs. It said capital Cadillac. That's all it said. And he's like, all right, you got to make one look like this. And, I'm high and he would throw it in the trash can. And the whole trash can got full. And then I was like, all right, I got to go. School had let out. So I left. But I did this 3 days in a row. And then he said, you can't do this anymore. I know what you're doing, but I'm going to take you home. I'll buy you lunch. I said, well, can you pay me for working? He said, you didn't do any work, man, but I'll loan you $20. So he's like, on the way out of there, we're driving, and he's like, we're going to stop by my clubhouse, and I got to see some friends of mine. And I thought, this guy's going to try sexual activity with me. But for food, I would do that. A 13-year-old kid with no money, no food. I did what I had to do. But he didn't. He took me to the Rising Sun Clubhouse. I was 13, and that's when they were doing the book. And there were people, long hair, all sitting around, bikes, all. And you know what? When I pulled in the parking lot, there was Harleys everywhere, and I thought, somebody here's got some weed. I'd never forget, because I had no clue where this guy was taking me. But anyway, after, that all ended, he dropped me off. The night I got clean was in that Rising Sun Clubhouse, and Bo was standing there. And he said, man, I knew you'd make it home. I mean, but you know what the first thing he asked me was? Hey, you got my $20? After almost 10 years. I got really involved in the program, and I dove in. I did so much service work. I got involved with some book writing committees. And, guys, service work's not just what you see right here and what you see at Area, if you even know about Area. There's this thing called the NA Society. And it's where people do things because it needs to be done, not because some committee asked you to do it. Books get written. Committees start. Areas form. And these are things because we want to see Narcotics Anonymous advance. Not because, you hear it a lot, somebody's pissed off with a resentment and a coffee pot started a meeting. I do not believe that. I believe that they wanted to make a difference in somebody's life. Because I've started a lot of meetings and they all had coffee pots, and I didn't do it because I was mad at anyone. I did it because I wanted to help you and help you and help you. And I know without the message, a good, strong, solid, NA message, you're going to die. And there's no other way to think about this. If you do not do what the suggestions say, you're going to die. So I came close a few times. Overdosed, went away. I don't know who that was that brought me back, but I'm glad they did. What I believe about Narcotics Anonymous is that I can't make it without it. And when I came to the rooms, I had no hope. I had no God. I had nothing. All I had was a vision that door to the Rising Sun Clubhouse was going to be open at 8 o'clock. And I was going to have my ass there. And everybody started talking about God. And I was just like, when my head started clearing, the fog started to clear, I was like, what is this God character? You'll say you got to turn it over to this thing everybody calls God. And I was like, I'm not hearing this. So my sponsor said, listen, man, slow down. Just focus on the group. For my first so many days or months or whatever, you guys were my higher power. Because I could not have done it without you. There's no way. And when it comes to the decision, we talk about we made a decision in the third step. It's the first time we were supposed to make a decision. Did anybody in here make a decision before the third step? If you did, you made a mistake, because it doesn't say make a decision until the third step. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood. There was no way that was going to happen for me because I didn't have one. And I heard these people share, so if you don't have a God, you're going to die. Oh, well, I'm dead. Take me out now. But it eventually became as I understood him. That's what got me and kept me here. It's as I understood him. You know what I understood? Not one damn thing. But that's what I knew I understood. And I could hang on to that. Then I got to the belief of I'll just be okay with you believing. If you do me a favor, I remember asking somebody this, can you pray to your God that I make it? If your God's so good and so big, help me. Just please just throw. And then he said, throw your keys under the bed, get on your knees, and just look for your keys. Get on your knees, look for your keys. And I had to do that. And I remember I took longer and longer and longer over the years to find my keys. Then I didn't need my keys to pray anymore. I started to grow. And the only way I did that was by being part of this process, not being around it. I love the osmosis thing. You don't get this by osmosis. I tried so long. I don't think my head popped out of my ass till I had about 8 or 9 years clean. Literally. I just knew all the answers. I was one of them, let's put it this way, when I got clean 3 weeks later, I was chairing a meeting. And everybody abandoned the meeting. So I went to area. They said, oh, you got to go to area. I'm like, what's area? They're like, well, come, I'll pick you up. We'll go. So I'm like, hey, I'm gonna be the GSR of this meeting. And they're like, how long have you been clean? 3 weeks. And they're like, no. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to unlock the door because I had the key. Somebody left me this big box with 3 weeks clean. But you know what? I was bound and determined, and I didn't want to die, and I knew that meeting was going to save my life. So I had to do it. But, it probably wasn't a good way to start service work. First service work I ever had was cleaning up ashtrays. I love Narcotics Anonymous. I've been here 18 and a half years. I've picked up one white chip. Because I knew from the beginning I didn't have to use again. Keep coming back. Stay. Don't leave. Because I'll say what they said to me. You never have to use again. And if you do, we're going to ruin your high. Bad. I've heard. I don't know. I don't want to find out. Because if I did that today, it'd be a freight train rolling. So, but anyway, thanks, guys, for letting me share. Thank you for asking me out. And oh yeah, happy birthday to who's doing that? Yes, happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.